Alright, General Code of Regulations, 7th edition, April 1st, 2015, Chapter 2, Railroad Radio and Communication Rules Transmitting. Employee operating a railroad must know of the following before transmitting the latest enough to make sure that the channel is not being used to give the required identification, not proceed with the further transmission until the acknowledgement is received the required identification. Employees transmitting and acknowledging railroad communication must begin with the required identification. The identification must include the following in its order of the base of the wayside station, the name and initial of the railroad, the name and the location, unique designation for the mobile unit, name and initials of the railroad, train name, a number, engine number, words identified with the precise mobile unit. If the communication continues without interruption, repeat the identification every 15 minutes. Stop. Short identification. After making a positive identification with switching classification, similar operation within the yard fix of the mobile unit may use the short identification after the initial transmission, acknowledgement, repetition. Employee who received the transmission must repeat it to the person transmitting the message, except when the communication concerning the yard switching operation, the record message of the automatic alarm device, or in general does not contain any information instructing the device that could affect the safety of the railroad operation. Ending the transmission. Employees with the railroad transmission must stay with the employee receiving the transmission the following with the supply with the indicator the communication has ended completed over with a response is expected out when proceed with the required identification when no response is expected. However, the requirements do not apply with the yard switching operations. Communication redundancy with the control of the unit any of the train with the required with the air brake type of the must be equipped with the operative railroad and left the radio with unless relieved by Rule 218 malfunction railroad. Malfunction radio. In addition, trains must have the second means of the communication, which may include an operative radio on any unit with a considered the portable radio, other wireless communication devices. Communication not understand with an incomplete with an employee who does not understand with the radio communication receiving the communication that is incomplete must not act upon the communication must treat it as if it was not sent. Any employee receiving the information that may affect the safety of the employee of the public the call of the damage of the property must take with a safe course when necessary to stop movement until the communication understand monitoring radio transmission. Radio is a attended base station mobile unit that must be turned on to the appropriate channel with the width and the volume loud enough to receive the communication. Employed with attending the base station mobile units may acknowledgement all transmission directed to the station or unit acknowledgement, and employed with receiving the radio call must acknowledge the call immediately unless doing so would interfere with the safety. Misuse of the radio communication. Employees must not use the radio communication to avoid complying with any of the rule. 210 emergency call. The emergency calls will begin with the other words, with the words emergency. These calls will be to cover the initial report of a hazard condition which could result in the death, the injury, damage to the property, severe the disruption, railroad operations such as the derailment, collision, storms, washout with the fire of the track, obstructions, and other emergency brake application. Additional emergency calls must be made with the following: overrunning limits of the authority, overrunning stopping indication. Emergency calls must contain with the much and complete with the information incident possible. All employees must give the absolute priority with emergency communication. If they are answering them but aiding with the emergency call, the employees must not transmit until there is no certain interfere with the result. 211 prohibited transmission. Employee must transmit with all false emergency with the unnecessary, the unidentified with communication. Employees must not incident language over the use incident language over the radio. Employees must not reveal the existence of the content of the meaning of any of the communications except the emergency communications to a person other than those with the intent of the for those whose duties may require the knowledge about it. Fixed signal and information. Employees must not use the radio to give the information to train with the engine crew about the name of the position, except aspect with the indication display with the fixed signal. List of the information that is given between the members of the same crew of the information is needed to warn any of the emergency not used is 213, 214. Transition of mandatory directive that transmitted by radio. Mandatory directives must conform to the applicable operating rules and the following. The train dispatcher must state that the mandatory directive will be transmitted. Employee must inform the train dispatcher ready to copy the stating of the employee's occupation, the conductor, engineer, foreman, maintain with the name of the location of the main track, wherever the main track will be entered for the employee with the operating control of the moving engine may not copy the mandatory directive. In addition, the mandatory directives must not be transmitted to the crew of the moving train if the conductor, engineer, train dispatcher feel that the transmission could adversely affect the safety of the operation of the train. The employees receiving the mandatory directive must comply with the writing using a format outlined in the operating rules. Before a mandatory directive is acted on, the conductor and engineer must each have the written copy of each of the crew member must read and understand it. Verbally transmit repeating mandatory direct with the transmitting repeating mandatory direct with the state and spell signal digit numbers of the number and digit of the state multiple digit and the number and digit and the identified decimal points of the point dot and decimal state and special directions. Phonetic alphabet is necessary for the phonetic alphabet Alpha Bravo Charlie etc. will be used with the pronouns clearly any letter used with the initial except the initial letters of the railroad assigned frequency. Railroad must authorize any of the railroad transmitter used with the rail server. The railroad transmitter must operate with the frequency of the Federal Communication Commission assigned with the railroad employees are prohibited from using other transmitted railroad frequencies not assigned with a particular territory. Railroad testing. Test radios may use as soon as possible before beginning with the work assignment. The radio test must include the exchange with the voice transmitting of the radio. The test must conform with the quality of the railroad transmission. Malfunctioning railroad. Malfunctioning radios must not be used as soon as possible to notify each of the crew member of the train with the dispatcher or other affected employee with the radios not working on the railroad failed with the control of the locomotive en route. Train may continue until the earlier of the next calendar day. Inspection of the nearest forward point where the radio can be repaired or replaced. Blasting operations employees must not operate the radio transmitters not located less than 250 feet from the blasting operation. Internal adjustments. Employees are prohibited to make an internal adjustment with railroad radio unless they are specifically authorized by the federal FCC and hold with the current certified technician certificate. Employee with the authorized to make the adjustment must carry out the FCC operator license, certified technician certificate, or verification card while on duty. Electronic device. The rules outline the requirements of use of the electronic device used within this rule of the following. Electronic device used with the conduct of the oral, written, visual communication, play for the receive of the telephone call, some of the read of the electronic mail message, of the text message, look at, picture, read book, or other written material, play a game, and navigate with the internet, navigate the physical word, play or view, or listen to the video of the play, view, listen, television, broadcast, play, listen, the music, execute computational function, perform any other function that is not necessary for the health or the safety of the person, or the entails of it, obtains the risk of the distraction of the employee, any other employee from a safety-related task. Railroad operating employee, individual who is engaged with the connect with the movement of the train, including hulls, train employee with the provide with the community intercity rail passenger transportation. Subject to hours, some of the governing the train service employed with the use of any of the electronic device prohibited use of the interfere with the employee's performance of the safety-related duties. Personnel with the railroad supply of the electronic devices. Personnel and railroad supply of electronic devices may be used as necessary to respond to an emergency situation involving the operation of the railroad. Respond to the emergency encounter while on duty as a communication device in event of the railroad malfunction. Personal electronic devices. Except for the deadheading of the other controlling locomotive of the railroad operating employee with the on duty include supervisors must each of the have each of the electronic device turned off the towed out of the site with any of the airpiece removed from their ear when on moving rolling equipment on road track equipment. Any member of the crew is on ground performing safety related duties or an employee assisting preparation of the train engine on track equipment. The railroad operating employee may use the personal cell phone only for voice communication when the rolling on the track of the equipment is stopped. The safety briefing is conducted with all the crew members to confirm that it will not interfere with any safety related required duty. No member of the crew will follow any track. Cell phones must be turned off when the call has been completed. Railroad operating employees may use the digital storage display function of the electronic device to prefer with the railroad rules, special instruction, timetable, the other directive provided to him to stop the use that does not interfere with any of the employee performance of the safety related duties. All other crew members, if they have been briefed on this limited use, will not use it. It must be turned off and stowed. A personal standalone camera may be used to take with a photograph of the safety hazard violation of the rail safety regulation order of the standard provided with the job briefing is conducted among all of the crew members and any other individual with a controlling cab of the moving equipment. Turned off immediately after the photograph has been made. It is not even employed with the control of the moving equipment. The personal standby calculator, digital watch, which is only the purpose of the timepiece, medical devices that are consistent with the railroad standard that may be even necessary to perform some of the duties. Railroad supplied electronic device. Railroad's operating employees may use the railroad supplied electronic device to send and receive the work related to the information. Railroad supervisors, railroad customers, railroad dispatch customers, so with the employee, other railroad employees necessary to the performance of the duties. Railroad operating employees must not use the railroad supplied electronic device for further purpose than it was intended for while operating control of the moving the track on the ground within 4 feet of any of the track ground engaged with the active switch operation riding rolling equipment during the switching operation had the control of the locomotive of any other employment assisting with the preparation of the train engine on the track with equipment including testing railroad equipment for the braking side of the control cab of the locomotive of the train on track equipment. Thus there has been a safety briefing. All crew members agreed that it is safe to do so. Visually obtained with the releasing minutes already direct for the railroad. Railroad communications is available. The railroad authorized electronic device may be used with the body of the body of a business car, passenger train for railroad business when it does not interfere with the employee of the performance of the safety related duties. 3. Section reserved. page is intentionally left blank. Chapter 4, Timetables.